Hi, welcome to Culturally Determined. I'm your host, Aryeh Cohen-Wade, and my guest today is Chris Arnade. Chris, could you introduce yourself?
I'm Chris Arnade, a photographer and writer, and I just released a book yesterday. My publisher told me I always have to say that, called Dignity, Seeking Respect in the Back Row America.
Yeah, so I'm holding the book up to the camera now. So thank you for coming on today. We had a conversation about a little more than 2 years ago on this platform, and we'll cover some of the same themes, but it won't be a retread because you have this whole new book. And as people can see, it's not just a regular book because it is larger, and it also has a number of your photographs. And so it's in full color, and there are photos throughout the book that you took of people on your journeys across the country. So why don't we start with how you ended up in Hunts Point, New York, and what that community is and how you ended up there.
Right. I was a Wall Street trader. I had gotten a PhD in physics prior to that. I spent 20 years on Wall Street. And somewhere around 07, 08, during the financial crisis, I kind of had a rethinking of what I was doing in the entire industry. And the kind of glib way I say it is I kind of realized we had screwed up, we being the bankers, but also the politicians who supported the bankers and the lawyers who supported the politicians who supported the bankers, kind of what I say now, I call the front row, kind of the educated elite in some senses, and the wealthy. And I realized that, one of the things about being a Wall Street trader and being in Manhattan is you sit in front of these walls of computers and it just flashes green screens, and that's kind of how you make your decisions, these green numbers flashing on a screen or red numbers. And you kind of lose touch with the consequences of your actions because they're all just blips on the screen. And, I decided to go out and talk to people, kind of to rethink the way I thought about the world. And that meant these long walks. I mean, sometimes 20 miles, 25 miles walks that I eventually brought my camera with and just basically just wandered around, just talked to people. At some point I had kind of done, I realized that what I was getting out of this was less about the pictures and more about the stories people told me when I met them and took their picture. And I also realized that I had done basically Manhattan, Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn. I hadn't done the Bronx. So I decided to go to the Bronx. And when I did, everybody told me, whatever you do, don't go to Hunts Point. And so, of course, I went to Hunts Point. Hunts Point in South Bronx in general, not just Hunts Point, is stigmatized because it has the highest poverty in New York City, the highest crime, I think, if not the highest, the second highest. And it's known for sex work and drugs, unfortunately. When I walked in, I saw that it was so much more than that. It was a thriving community of 30,000 people who had been stigmatized by racism and had been denied all sorts of general, secondary education, secondary institutions. And often it's where New York City put the things it didn't want. It put waste disposal facilities there. It put garbage dumps there. And what I saw was just a much different community than what was being told in the general dialogue. And that made me keep going back and back. Part of it was just personal as well. I enjoyed being there. I enjoyed the stories. I enjoyed the community. I enjoyed the light. It's a south-facing neighborhood, so as a photographer, it has good light. But another part was political. I was just very frustrated that what I saw was so much different than what was kind of the conventional story about the South Bronx. So eventually, this evolved into a 3-year project where I ended up losing my job, quitting my job, by taking a buyout, whatever, being quitted, and spent time with what I saw in the community as the most stigmatized within that. Hunts Point itself and the South Bronx itself is stigmatized, but within that community, the addicts and the homeless are even more stigmatized. The most stigmatized of the stigmatized, and that's who I ended up focusing my time on as a group of a street family of roughly 50 people who were in the community and were part of the community, but a stigmatized part of the community.
Mm-hmm. So what drew you? So you had been living you came up with this metaphor of the front row and the back row. and you had been living like the front row life. You went to good schools and got a PhD. And was working on Wall Street and living in a like fancy part of Brooklyn, and living the conventional American success story. So what like drew you to the people who are like living like down and out, like as most as close to the like margins as you could get? Like, why did you want to go so far and talk to those kind of people?
I think partly it's my background. I mean, I did grow up in a small town that is very much working class. Even though I grew up in a very conservative small town in the South, my parents were quite liberal. My dad was an academic, and basically we spent a lot of time He spent a lot of time focused on marginalized communities, both the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s, as well as internationally. So it was kind of where I came from in some levels, and that's something I had forgotten about and kind of had lost touch with, was that kind of sense of learning and that sense of not forgetting where you come from, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I was ever. I think you talk to my friends on Wall Street. I was never really fit in there. I was never really fully comfortable there because my background was strongly from the left, and was not your traditional Wall Street background. So in some senses, it was kind of becoming more what I was traditionally who I was.
Mm-hmm. So why did you? So I guess when I first heard of you, it was around the 2016 election, and you were posting these Twitter threads of photos you have taken of people around the country and kind of commenting on how people on the left were misunderstanding. Kind of part of it was like misunderstanding the Trump voter and just misunderstanding like poverty in general. So how did you decide that like beyond just staying within New York City, you wanted to like travel the country and find these like forgotten areas?
Part of it was burnout. I had spent 3 years with homeless addicts, and it was just taking a physical and mental toll on me. But also it was intellectual, which is I wanted to see is what I saw in the Bronx or South Bronx was what I'd learned, the injustice, the frustration, the sense of like this immense political frustration I was having was true beyond just Hunt's Point. Was it, in the mathematical term, was it translationally invariant? Was there more to it than just this one particular stigmatized neighborhood? So I started going to other equally stigmatized neighborhoods, if not more stigmatized neighborhoods across the country. It was never intended to be. I mean, I was never wanting to write about Trump. I never wanted to address it because, I'm just not a political reporter. It's not my thing. Poverty and addiction were my thing. The stigmatized community stigmatized by racism and addiction. It just so happens by sheer coincidence when I started this process of going out beyond the Bronx, it was like literally a week before Trump announced for presidency. And one of the things that I found in the white communities I was going to, and to a certain degree, in Trump, all anybody wanted to talk about was Trump. And, his campaign was launched, as a joke and treated as a joke by so many people, including me. But, look, I can't deny what I saw. Like if in one day you talk to 50 people and 48 of them mention Trump, and then you log on to Twitter or you look at the press and people are just ignoring it, so it was, I think what I ended up doing when I did talk about Trump and did talk about the election was trying to warn leftists, like, this is a real problem. I don't want to be labeled an apologist for the Trump voter. I didn't want Trump to win at all. I felt like what was frustrating me about the left was this denial that this guy had a chance. Not only had a chance, I kept saying, this guy might win. Like, you got to take this threat seriously. And the other thing is partly the other reason was like, as you've seen in my book, I think over half of the book takes place in minority communities. It's not Trump voters. And I found that the journalists who would take my pieces I was writing would want only pieces about Trump. Mm-hmm. I'm going to Selma, Alabama. I'm going to, the black communities, and all you want to hear about is Trump. And, so it kind of got spun as a Trump project, but it never was about a Trump project. It was a project about addiction and poverty and stigmatized communities. And within the white communities of those, Trump resonated.
Yeah, and I was actually surprised by how little Trump is in the book. I don't think his name is mentioned until like after, like 80% of the way through the book, and then because there's one part where you're in Cleveland during the nomination, the Republican National Convention. But yeah, it's not. There's a lot fewer politics things discussed in here than I was expecting, which I think was good considering how omnipresent Trump is and how everything everything is seen through his lens. But did you think at one point of doing more like a here's how you can understand the Trump voter kind of thing as the book, or was it always more like focused on this?
No, I didn't want to do that at all. Again, I think I've watched people like Trump rise across the world, through my prior work, both in Latin America. I grew up traveling a lot across the world. And, part of the way these people stay in power is people just talk about them all the time, mm-hmm. both their opponents, and I just wanted this book to be about things much bigger than that. And, to the degree there's a lesson about Trump, I think it's, I hope people take away from the book that maybe they can understand a little bit more why he might be appealing, both why he might be more appealing to people than they want to admit. And again, this isn't an apology for people who voted for Trump. It's just, if you want to stop Trump, and I want to stop Trump, is you got to understand why he appeals to people. It's like, your enemy. If you view him as your enemy. To explain is not to excuse. And we need, you want to understand, why people are attracted to this person, without being like, an apology for them. So one other thing that you said in that, so you have a kind of a long introduction that deals with the Hunts Point, part of your life. And you talk about, you're following people who are drug addicts or sell drugs or prostitutes. And you talk about like kind of either developing or maybe kind of reigniting a substance abuse problem of your own. And you would go to bars after you would leave Hunts Point and drink a lot. And that was surprising to me because I don't remember seeing you mention that in other stuff that I've read that you've written. So, yeah, can you talk a little bit about that and how that, I guess that gave you sympathy with people who have drug addiction problems? And well, I wanted to put that in there for honesty's sake, but also I didn't want to dwell on it because people like me tell that story all the time, and it gets told in a very sympathetic way. And I don't want to equate what I did at all with anything with what the people I dealt with were going through, so I try to minimize it. I wanted it there for honesty, but I also didn't want to emphasize it too much because I want this to be about the people I met, not about me. I didn't want people to say, well, you got clean, anybody can get clean. Well, I had a lot of support, and my addiction, or I wouldn't even call it addiction, my substance abuse was driven by selfishness, wasn't driven by any great pain I was going through. And almost 95% of the people I met on the road, their addiction was driven by a great pain and a great situation they were going through. So I didn't want to make the equivalency at all.
Mm-hmm. So the first chapter of the book is about McDonald's, and that's something that we did discuss 2 years ago, but we'll talk about it again. And there's lots of photos in here of people in McDonald's. And the chapter has a great title, which is "If You Want to Understand the Country, Visit McDonald's." So yeah, why has McDonald's become this place where you can like go and see, a part of life that to the front row is kind of invisible?
Because it's so essential. I mean, often because it's the only thing working in these towns, and that's not necessarily saying that McDonald's and the way it operates is great. It's saying the way we run our society is bad. If we force people to have to find community in a place that was designed to be entirely transactional, then it tells you about the society we've built has fallen apart in terms of giving community to people. I think about Gary, Indiana. I think about places that have been devastated by by factories moving away and by racism. And what you go to Gary on a certain time of day, and the only thing that really is kind of like it's filled with people and active and working is the McDonald's. And this is true so many neighborhoods where the McDonald's provides kind of a community center for people who are on the margins. And it provides a place for them to meet, and for the most marginalized, for the addicts, for the homeless, it's generally a place where they can go and be left alone. They can just sit there. They can go, on their way in, they can grab a newspaper out of the garbage can and a soda cup, so they look like maybe fill it up at the at the soda machine, and just sit there and just be left alone. One of the things I keep saying is, like, if a homeless person goes to a college campus, as open-minded as college campuses are, they kick them out. The college campus will call the police. In New York, in a McDonald's, they can go there and they can go in the bathroom, maybe wash up, maybe shoot up, and charge their phone, use the Wi-Fi, but more importantly, just be left alone, man. To sit and talk to each other and be, maybe meet their friends there. And in some places like Bakersfield, California, where I spent, that time in that McDonald's, and I write about that in the book, it's really a central, it's like a tree house. It's like a clubhouse, and it serves again, I don't, as a leftist, people are going to come back. McDonald's doesn't pay its employees enough. McDonald's provides bad health, but that's not really a big concern when you're on the streets and all you really need is good cheap food in a place to escape the weather.
Yeah, I mean, is it so? I guess part of it is that for either McDonald's central command or like the individual managers have said, like, we're not going to kick people out even if they're sitting here for hours and hours on end, like just nursing a coffee or something. So, I feel like in a lot of places, if you're just kind of sitting there besides a public park or something, someone will come along and say, like, you need to move along. But yeah, it's interesting because McDonald's is the icon of kind of like American capitalism and a lot of things that the left sees as wrong with America. Especially in like the 90s and the 2000s, there was that movie Super Size Me, where the guy ate McDonald's 3 meals a day for 30 days and like gained 20 pounds. And McMansions are a term of condemnation of like cookie cutter architecture, and there's all this other stuff where we just say like McDonald's is kind of, poisoning the country. But then like you demonstrate that it's clearly serving this function of community center and just like place to go, place to use the bathroom or possibly shoot up. And people can get a sandwich for like $3.
People also go there and play checkers. They go there and they play bingo. They go there and they play chess. I always think about there's an East LA McDonald's in a 95% Mexican American neighborhood, working class Mexican American neighborhood. I think it's in Pico Rivera. The McDonald's, I would sit there for weeks on end, and everybody would come in and play chess. That's where the chess club met. So look, I at a much deeper level, and I don't like the society that we've built that is all franchises and all profit-driven companies, and I kind of mentioned that in my book. I hope that comes clear that this kind of this uber efficiency, which is what McDonald's represents, this obsession with profits and efficiency is why we have McDonald's. I have a problem with that, but at the pragmatic level, that's the world we got right now, and in that world, people at the margins, people on the working class, that's what they really have access to. I mean, that's the world we built for them, as I say. I think I say in a line is like, we in the front row have built this hyper efficient, capitalist driven society where we built we've ensured that McDonald's are the only things that exist in these communities, and then we don't use them.
Yeah. And so the two companies, as far as I can remember, that you mentioned in this book are McDonald's and Walmart. And Walmart is doesn't get as much profile as McDonald's, but you mentioned people shopping at Walmart, some people sleeping in their cars in the Walmart parking lot, what I did a few. I also slept in my car in parking lots now and then. Walmart. Right. And then the Walmart is the thing that like moved in and drove, in one telling, the like small businesses on Main Street out of business. And then there's one place where people are really mad that the Walmart is like, the closest Walmart is like 30 minutes away. And so it's very hard for them to shop. Maybe that's Cairo. But
it's Cairo, yeah.
Yeah, so Cairo, Illinois. So Walmart is like an important part of of life for people who are on the margins. And once again, this made me think like, anti-Walmart campaigning was like a big part of progressive politics in like the 2000s. And I watched a documentary that was called something like The Cost of a Low Price or something. That was an anti-Walmart documentary. And, people would boycott Walmart, or right-thinking people would go to Target instead of Walmart because somehow Target was better than Walmart, didn't like ruin small communities as much. So yeah, but I guess it's just like it just reminded me again of the contrast between the right-thinking people are condemning the giant multinational corporation that's destroying the country, but at the same time they're being used by very poor people as well. So I don't know what to make of that.
I mean, one of the things I say is when I go into community, if I go into a community and I want to find a refugee community and they're immigrants, I go to the Walmart. That's where they are. That's where they mix with other people. That's the one place where you'll meet, if you go into, like in Lewiston, Maine, which is, I think, 20% Somali at this point, or 10% Somali, where the Somalis and the Quebecois, the whites, interact is at the Walmart. That's where they both shop. That's where a lot of them work. And so, yes, look, I have a lot of problems with these. I have big problems with our kind of hyper-efficient, monopolistic, capitalistic society we've created. But the elites opt out of that and then blame the working class for it, and then make fun of the working class for doing it. They say, I'm not going to use Walmart as make fun of people who use Walmart while using Amazon or while owning Walmart stock, in their pension fund, so that's not all elites, obviously. I mean, and believe me, and I don't want to keep on sounding like I'm bashing the left because I'm a leftist, but the right is bad. The right has empowered these corporations for forever. I just wish the left would fight a little bit harder and remember that it once was the party of the working class and needs to regain be the party of the working class, and understand that in some cases, despite their best intentions, they don't understand the working class they advocate for. That's not true of all of them, obviously. There's a lot of leftist progressives who completely understand the working class, come from the working class, remember their roots, and are still part of it. But often the most important voices within the party, the political elite, have forgotten that they are the party of the working class. They should be.
Let's talk about the Lewiston section a little bit. So I found that section really interesting because it's I've been to Lewiston, one of the few places you mentioned that I've been to, and and it also is kind of one of the few of the more positive sections in the book, or it doesn't exactly have a happy ending. And I won't say what happens at the end of that section, but it seems like the Somali immigrants that have come to Lewiston and established themselves there, are kind of revitalizing this town in Maine, and they started businesses in the closed downtown Main Street shops and stuff like that. And there's you describe tension between the French Canadian Americans who people who moved to Lewiston 100 years ago to be loggers or something, and the new arrivals, but it didn't seem like a kind of a poisonous type of anti-immigrant rhetoric that you can hear in other places. So can you talk a little bit more about that, and also why you think the Somalis have been able to like succeed in a way that other communities haven't?
I think one of the things I wanted to do was, again, I don't want to bash people over the head in the book. I hope they take the lessons from the chapters without me having to, and one of the things I wanted to show was, the Somalis had, have come in and taken a kind of revitalized a part of town that has been depressed for a long time. And that, I wish that part of town had never been depressed. I think that, that part of town should have, when the factories left, that hurt the white working class that was there. Into the vacuum came refugees, and they got pushed back. Some of it aggressive, some of it just kind of whispery. But I don't want to minimize the damage, the problems that a lot of Somalis in Lewiston have faced. But in aggregate, it seems like the community is handling the situation well. I mean, it could have gone so much worse. That you have this community moving in, who is very different than what came before, there have been incidences that I don't want to diminish in terms of the racism and the obstacles the Somalis have faced there. I felt like at the end of that chapter, I included a little bit from another town in Nebraska, where Somalis had moved in, and it seemed like that was going much less well. Mm-hmm. Lewiston was partially because of time, partially because of work on both sides of the aisle, meaning the Quebecois and the Somalis outreach programs. I think things in Lewiston are going well by measures of other towns. They're not going well enough. I don't think there is any Somali in Lewiston who will tell you they haven't faced problems, and they don't still face stigma and a sense of people just telling you you don't belong here, even though they've been there now for 30 years, 25 years. But I think one of the things that didn't make it into the book that I wish, I spent a lot of time also in Mexican American communities, especially El Paso, and you see that kind of that sense that the one working class communities who probably still believe in the American dream are those who are most recent arrivals, the immigrants and refugees who've come in. And I believe you're upstate New York, right? Mm-hmm. I think you see that there. I know in Buffalo there's a big Iraqi community. There's a Bosnian community in Utica. When I go to those towns, these kind of towns, especially in the Rust Belt, that have been devastated by the industry leaving, kind of the only positive story you find in them is kind of refugee communities and immigrant communities who've come in and kind of rebuilt, and rebuilt parts of the town.
So do you think it's like there's throughout the book there's mentions of people being like upset about how the main street or the downtown used to be full of small businesses, and people used to go there to shop and get their hair cut and stuff like that. And a lot of those businesses have gone out of business. And it was an interesting contrast with the story of the Somalis in Lewiston, who were able to like revitalize a downtown. And so the businesses, it seemed like mostly catered to other Somalis selling like halal meat and stuff like that. But is it like if the community was like beaten down by 50 years of deindustrialization and everything slowly leaving, then people can't like find it within themselves to try to like, I'll start a business, or let's band together and make this a community hall or something like that. Whereas like new immigrants are just like starting fresh and they'll have the energy and they're not, they have the American dream still in their minds and they have a sense of anything is possible here. And so they'll start a small business or something like that. Or maybe the other option would be like, when a group of like thousands of Somali refugees come to one place, like the front row Somali refugees are still there. Like they're still staying there for some length of time. And then maybe like their kids will go to Harvard or something like that. And so the people who are the go-getters and the job creators, as Mitt Romney used to say, like they're still part of that community and they like are let loose and do their thing.
I think in an odd way, immigrant communities come often with a lot more, a lot less stigma attached to them than African Americans. I think in many cases, the Somalis who've come with a lot of. You see that where they said, "Oh, I'm here because my cousin's here, and my cousin helped me find a job at blah and blah," and so there's a big. They come with often come with skills that post graduate degrees. It's not all just working class people. It's elites that come as well.
Right.
And I think it just creates a more vibrant, a more functional community in the sense that, again, and I also think they face less. I don't want to diminish the fact that they do get a lot of racist attacks and they do face stigma, but I think no group in the United States faces as many obstacles as African Americans do, native-born African Americans. I think they are burdened with a legacy of current racism and a legacy of racism that just makes it so much harder. So when people say, well, if Somalis can do it, or if Koreans can do it, or Vietnamese can do it, why can't blacks do it? It's just, for me, it's just pretty obvious. It's like that all those three immigrant communities don't face the obstacles and racism that the blacks do here in this country. In terms of Lewiston, I can't say, I think there is some what they call brain drain going on. I think, a lot of the younger people who've been raised in Lewiston who are Quebecois or white or French Canadian American? Is that the term? Or just Lewiston residents, move on, and don't come back. And I think that's certainly a problem, with our system is we tend to take what I call the front row and pluck them out of the town and move them on, and that hurts these communities. I mean, one of the communities that didn't make it into the book, which is one of my favorite communities in America, is Lumberton, North Carolina, and it's fascinating because it's 1/3 black, 1/3 Native American, the Lumbee Indians, and 1/3 white. But I spent some time in a community college there, and what I found was really interesting. The community college was out of session, but what was in session was basically a magnet high school for the county. I think it's Robeson County, where it was one of these magnet schools where when you graduate from high school, you also get what's it called, an associate's degree or a 2-year college degree. It's a program my daughter went to here in New York City, and it was really a wonderful group of kids. It was, I think, the ones that were graduating, there were like 50 of them. They were all from the county. They were all lower income mostly. I mean, they're all middle to lower income because Lumberton is not a wealthy place. And they were they're a very diverse group, black, white, Native American. But they were all, to a person, they were all going to leave Lumberton and not come back. Now, I get it. I don't want to ever question. I mean, I did that. I think they have every right to do that. They don't find a community that values them in their mind. In Lumberton, they want to make a career beyond what Lumberton offers. But I think, it's unfortunate in some levels that they if they returned, would do great things in Lumberton. And it would help Lumberton fight the stigma it currently fight in some of the problems. So I do think it's a problem that we tend to, I left and, part of the book is I talked about trying to go back. I don't want to go back to where I grew up. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to tell anybody they should have to stay, but that process is not leaving these towns better off.
That seems like a good segue to discussing a chapter that is called "This Is My Home," and kind of looking at that question from the other side, the people who stay in these small communities and why they stay. And the most common answer is this is my home. So
it's one of those things that it took me a while to get how offensive that question was. Meaning part of this process for me was kind of 5 years of realizing that a lot of the way I used to think was extremely offensive and privileged in an unintentional way. And this whole idea that you should just tell people to move. I mean, why? Like, but I'll let you finish your question. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess I didn't have a distinct question, but like, I mean, one of the you quote multiple young people, especially, who say they are staying because they have to take care of their parents, and maybe they would want to leave, but like, their parents are on disability and that's all they have, so something like that. So that's like, that makes sense, but that's also kind of sad. And then you have these other people who, yeah, they've lived here, they were born here. You note in some places people will say, "Oh, I wasn't born here. I was born 10 miles away." Like, very different.
The woman in Cairo. Okay, Cairo is a town of, I don't know, 2,000 people, if that. That is maybe, occupies where the Ohio, I think, which two rivers? I think it's the Ohio, Mississippi. Yeah, the Ohio and Mississippi interact, come together there, or maybe.
Yeah, it's like the far southern point of Illinois.
And it's 95% African American. But the woman who, when I asked her, "Are you from here?" I was at the project, so the low income housing project, and she's like, "No, I'm from," and she mentions a neighborhood like 5 blocks away. So, I got that so often, no, I didn't. Are you from here? No, I grew up, in, Blankville. Where's Blankville? Oh, it's 3 miles down the road. So, I think, look, the way I think about it is, and I'll kind of get in a more kind of buzzwordy philosophical level, which is like, all we really care about these days is things we can put a value on, a monetary value on. We can measure, and those things, those forms of meaning, those things we can't measure, we don't really value. So, what's the value of, place? What's the value of, it's one of the few things you're gifted as a poor person if you grow up someplace. Like, you're a member of, you're somebody from Utica is what, a Uticayan?
I'm not sure.
You're in Syracuse, right? Or Syracusean?
I'm a Rochesterian.
Rochesterian. I mean, like, that means something to people, and it should mean something to people. And so, you don't have to apply for any school or to do that. And that's the same with rural places. Like, people really might be attached to a place, and it means a lot to them at a very deep level. And we tend to think that people who say, "Hey, I really want to be here because the hills are me, man. These are my hills. This is me, like going out every morning and feeding the chipmunks or whatever. That's kind of me. That's who I am." And we all just simply say, "Well, come on, that's not value. That's dumb." And I think that's valuable. And again, you talk about the multiple times there are young people I've met who can't leave because they have obligations to their family, or their family has obligations to them. I agree with you at one level, that's sad, but another level, isn't that admirable that the woman is the 18-year-old Mexican American woman who's staying in East LA so she can be her mom's translator. She's the only one who speaks both Spanish and English. I also find that admirable that she's doing that. I was able to leave because my parents, had their stuff together by our measures, and so I don't know if we should why we should treat each other as basically things that can like little pawns on the table that can just move. Because, and then at a pragmatic level, you're asking people to move often when their home is all the only investment they have. And you're asking them to sell at the low often, like, mm-hmm. This town is dying, therefore sell your home, and you won't get very much for it. It's like, right. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. In Rochester, the one of the divides, at least, is East Side, West Side, and the city is split by the Genesee River, and the Erie Canal once 100 years ago went through downtown. It was rerouted at some point, and so that was the core of downtown. And then the East Side is the wealthier side, and the West Side is somewhat less wealthy. It had the Kodak manufacturing plant, this huge facility, is on the West Side, and And yeah, people. I'm not a native here. I moved here about 8 years ago, and people treat East Side West Side as like crossing the Bering Strait or something. The people who just say, "Oh, I don't go to the West Side," and whereas you could swim across the Genesee in like 5 minutes at most. It's or maybe 2 minutes. So yeah, it's just like everyone, like, and I think in a lot of places there's just the sense that like this is our part and that's their part over there, and we're different. We're different than them. Did you ever go to Oklahoma City in your travels?
Yes, I did.
I read a book a couple weeks ago. I finished it. That's called Boomtown, I believe, and it's a story, both like a history of Oklahoma City and the story of the NBA team, the Thunder, over the past couple of seasons and them trying to win the championship. And I really knew nothing about the Oklahoma City, but saw some positive references to this book and got it out. And the conceit is basically like Oklahoma City is like the strangest city in America, because of how it came to be through this crazy like land rush where people like in 1880 literally like stood in a line and then started running in order to reach the point where they could claim a plot. And then all these, the like businesses controlled the town for a long time. And then they did like, according to this author, they did like the most dramatic urban renewal and subsequent failure of urban renewal in America, and basically bulldozed most of downtown with this plan that was designed by I.M. Pei, the architect who just died a couple weeks ago. And so basically they bulldozed everything and built very little. So the downtown which is the original spot of where people like made a land claim in 1880, is now like mostly parking lots, and they never built the convention center and all this other stuff. And there's other many reasons why Oklahoma City is strange. Like they always have to be on guard for tornadoes and stuff like that. But I was just wondering if you, and also there's a lot of like racial tension, both in Oklahoma City and famously in Tulsa, where there was this race riot that, where 300 black people were murdered. So yes, did you have any, Oklahoma City?
Well, I mean, I spent most of my time in Oklahoma was spent in the black community. And what struck me was, as an outsider who didn't know much about it, was I had not realized there was that large a black community. I had not realized it was as it faces as many obstacles as it did. Although I shouldn't have been surprised, they face obstacles everywhere. But the other thing that struck me, and it made it very odd to me, was how much space there is, as you mentioned. Like, the streets are really wide and the blocks are really long, and it's really just this weird sense of I'm in a poor, I'm both in a suburb, in some senses, but I'm also in a very poor black community that is kind of structured like a suburb. And so it was in many ways, it's a very strange place. And then because it's Oklahoma, you have the Native American population, which adds a complexity to everything. But one of the things that frustrates me when you mention that is when we kind of divide things into red and blue America. When people just say, "Look, I'm frustrated with Trump. I'm frustrated with the way Alabama and Mississippi votes or Oklahoma votes. Let's secede or get rid of them." And I'm like, Oklahoma City has a very large black community. Mississippi has the highest percentage of black voters of any state. Within very red states are very, very blue areas, and within very blue states, very red areas, as you know, in upstate New York. So this idea that it's geographically based, our problems is, I think, very, very mistake. And it's something I wish people would stop saying. Like, again, Oklahoma City, it's a very large African American community.
Yeah, and the book is interesting. I recommend it to people who have an interest in it. And yeah, he talks about especially, the city was always like, we'll build a new highway and that will like fix everything. It'll like let people come in really fast. And where are they going to build the highway? The black neighborhoods where they can't effectively fight against City Hall.
Imagine.
So the book is broken up by these sections of photographs, and like 20 pages in a row of photographs. So here's someone sitting in there, sitting in McDonald's, and these are kind of the way they're presented is kind of like, there's no captions and there's no identification of the location, and you talk about how you usually use like pseudonyms for the people you're interviewing. So why I had a thought about why you might want to do that, but why did you choose to do it that way and not say like, oh, this photo is from the Bronx or whatever?
Because I wanted it goes back to what I just said before, basically, which is I want people to know that this isn't just about geography, right? It's everywhere. Like that person in the McDonald's that you first, the African American gentleman in the McDonald's, that's now become kind of the most used photograph in the book, is in Hammond, Indiana, or Illinois. I don't know which way where Hammond is. It's right near the border of Indiana and Illinois. It's south of Chicago. But the picture that could have been there was from Rochester, actually. One of my favorite McDonald's in the world is in Rochester. It's in the African American community in Rochester. It's in a big strip plaza, like at a it stands.
We'll have to figure out off air where exactly this McDonald's is, so I can go visit it.
It stands a bit apart from the plaza. The plaza is one of those old shopping malls from like the 70s, and then it's one of those things where it's on the roadside, and the plaza is way back from the roadside. It could have, that picture could have come from that one. It could have come from Syracuse, Rochester. It could have come from, Los Angeles. And that's kind of my point, is that, it's meant to basically say this is really everywhere and this is nowhere. It could, and also, I don't also think, the other thing was, I don't think it's necessarily fair to the person to be like, oh, that's Jim from,
right.
Let's go dig his past and find out why he's doesn't have dignity.
Right. So okay, let's talk about dignity. And why did you decide that would be the title and subtitle "Seeking Respect in Back Row America"? What is it about dignity that you want to make it your theme, and how do you see it playing out in the lives of the people you talk to?
I think what I try to build from the chapters is this idea that we've taken away a lot from the working class. As our economy has shifted to being, as our culture has shifted to being all about the economy, as our economy has shifted to being all about how much it's really harmed people without education, and it's really harmed the working class. And so I basically say, look, we built this culture that really this society that really hurts the working class, those who without education. And we've taken away kind of what I say are things that they can value without having to get credentials, faith, race, place, all these things that are just you're born with, you're gifted. And that's basically humiliating. And a lot of people feel humiliated. A lot of people feel disrespected. A lot of people, and this isn't a white or black thing. This is or Hispanic. This is just all the people I write about: white, black, Hispanic, urban, rural. They kind of feel like they're being looked down on, and I think they are right. I think they do. They have that. They are being looked down on. I think we kind of look down on them, and that's humiliating. And one of the things you do when you're humiliated is you try to look for a way to kind of find respect. And, the response to feeling humiliated is to want dignity and to try to seek it out. And, what really struck me through this project, both when I first walked into the South Bronx, was how resilient people are, how despite facing structural racism, despite facing a society rigged against them in every way, economic and cultural, people make the best of what they're given and kind of overcome the humiliation I think of, it's an odd example, but one of the things in the South Bronx that brought me there, was the pigeon keepers. People keep pigeons on their roof. Mm-hmm. To me, that was a larger part in the book. We got edited out, but the meaning, what I mean by that is that's, pigeons are considered kind of rats with wings by a lot of people, and here they, I would love people to go on these roof decks where people, there's often roof decks in abandoned buildings where people break into the building and put these coops up on the top and have 800 pigeons that they fly in these kind of beautiful swirls and take care of. And to me, that's beautiful. That's, making the most of what the world has given you and creating art and creating beauty and, giving yourself dignity by being an artist in that sense. And you see it so many different places where people are forced to improvise, and create the most one, graffiti is another one of those where, it's a non-approved form of art, but it's beautiful. And it's a way to kind of saying, I want dignity. Now, wanting dignity and feeling humiliated, the quest for dignity doesn't necessarily always end up in good places. It leads to, I think it leads to racism in many cases. It can lead to wanting to join racist organizations because they give you dignity based on your skin color. And that's bad. And I think we should call it out when it happens and fight it. But I think if you want to, in my opinion, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, if you want to fight that tendency, you fight the broader question of why do people feel humiliated?
Yeah, and you and I think it's the last chapter. You have a juxtaposition of two stories. So one is a white guy somewhere in the South, and he has a Confederate flag on his truck or whatever. And you ask him, or you say something like, what does that mean to you, or something like that. And he says, it's just like our Southern way of life, hunting and fishing. That's what it means to me. And I had never heard anyone say Confederate flag meant hunting and fishing to them before. But that's an interesting thing that probably most people in the North would not accept or not understand. And then you have this tell the story that I think is in Milwaukee of a side street where a young black man was shot by the cops and
killed by the cops.
Okay, killed by the cops, and then his friends, people built like a big memorial right where it happened, and then his friends, every day they block off the street with their cars and kind of just hang around and tell stories while they're there, and you walk around there, and there's some people are not very accepting of you walking around there.
Yeah, I mean, it ebbed and flowed. Some days it was basically and some days there was only 5 people. Some days there were 50 people, 20 people, and I'd come at the tail end of it. It was winding down because it happened I think 2 months earlier. But I think one of the quotes I love so basically this gentleman would get in my face when I would get there when I was trying to take a picture of the memorial. One of the quotes I really love, and I think it's right, is he basically tells me this is not my story to tell, meaning me. It's and he's right in many ways. And I put that in there because I want people to say, yeah, this guy, what they're, it's part of a broader thing. I think when people look at the way young blacks respond to how they've been stigmatized and look at them and say, that's wrong. You need to be more polite. You need to be more interactive. You need to be, no, I mean, I get where they're coming from, and I get where he's coming from, and I get where the frustration is boiling over. And, I think the thing he said to me was I kept on saying, well, look, hey, I'm actually well-intended. I'm a journalist. I'm going to tell, I'm here to do you right. And he's like, the journalists have already turned, Savili, the young man who was shot down by the police, they've already turned him into a thug, and they're turning us into thugs. And why can I trust you? And he's right. Why could he trust me? One of the things I want people to read, I hope people got out of that passage was, I was the one who was wrong. The behavior they were doing, and to me was I think the appropriate behavior, which is basically saying, I don't trust you outsiders. Mm-hmm. You've done nothing good for us in the past. Why should I trust you? Mm-hmm. And he's right.
So one thing that since the last time we talked has come, an idea that's come to be discussed more by economic types and intellectuals and some politicians or wannabe politicians is a universal basic income. And Andrew Yang is this guy who's I'm not exactly sure what his background is, Silicon Valley investor or something, and he's running explicitly on a plan that every American would get $1,000 a month from the government, for they don't have to do anything. They just get it, and that's a baseline of support. So and the last time we talked a lot about people wanting work and the dignity of work, and that there's a lot of stuff in here about people who, the factories left, and that was the beginning of the decline. So have you thought any about universal basic income? Do you think that would be a good policy?
I'm still as confused as I think I was then. Meaning, my tendency is to think, look, I wish what I do know, having spent a lot of time around the working classes, the jobs that are available to them suck and don't provide dignity. I think, others will completely disagree with me, as I think the answer is to provide stable union employment or jobs that pay them more and give them a sense of stability. I don't know if we're going to ever, if the GOP will ever allow that again. But I do also know that the social services network we provide is far too complex. And, you have Section 8 housing, you have food stamps, you have an array of programs that have all sorts of hurdles and things. It's just give people money, man. If you're below a certain threshold, just give them a card that is money. I don't care what they spend it on. They can spend it on housing, they can spend it on food, they can spend it on Diet Coke, they can spend it on junk food, maybe they'll spend it on drugs. Look, it's not my place to tell people how to spend their money, and to be a nanny state. But we need to give the poor, we need to give the working class more support. It needs to be simpler support. It preferably needs to be cash support. Do we need to go all the way and have a universal basic income? I worry that the problem with that is I think you're still going to get people who, you're still going to be, if you're somebody who gets the universal basic income and does nothing else, you're still going to be stigmatized as a uni or whatever. Like, oh, you're just a uni, you lazy uni. So,
right.
I mean, is it, am I against it? No, because anything is better than what we have now. Do I think it's like the magic formula that will solve all our problems? Absolutely not. Nothing is. Our problems are too deep in my mind. But I generally believe, it's interesting as I think it's Matt Brunig loves to kind of tease people, including me, when I say this, which is like, what I generally learned was everybody wants a decent job. Like, people just don't want handouts, and to use the handout is a wrong phrase. People would far rather, do people abuse the social safety? Yeah, of course. Do Wall Street people abuse the system? Yeah. there's always a small margin group but you know what? It's better. We need to give poor people and working class more assistance. We certainly need universal health care. I mean, what is really just appalling is our health care system. But beyond that, most people just want a job, man. Mm-hmm. They will, because it provides a community as well, right? And it provides a sense of meaning. Like it's very black, white, Hispanic. Everybody wants a job. Now, Matt and others would kind of laugh at me and say, "Well, shouldn't the poor have the right to leisure as much as the rich do?" And I agree. Like I wish. Maybe there is a working class who doesn't want to toil on a job and instead wants to be a philosopher. That's cool. And so I think he's right about that. So, my general sense of finding that everyone wants a job, I think others have pointed out, yeah, okay, maybe you've talked to only people who want jobs. There's a lot of people who want to, should be allowed to have the freedom to not have to work. And I tend to agree with that as well. So I've given you a wishy-washy answer because I'm pretty unclear about what I want, what I think is right. I do know that the problems we face right now are so great that, hey, man, why not try that?
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I don't know how I think about it. I definitely think that it is not going to happen anytime soon, just based on the politics of it and how the American system works. But like,
I think if I had to come up with one conclusion from my book, it's that the poor are screwed over in every imaginable way, and they'll continue to get screwed over in every imaginable way. They'll get screwed over economically, they'll get screwed over culturally. Anything that helps the poor has a low chance of passing.
Mm-hmm. There was one part in the book that you just reminded me of, which was It was you were talking to one of the white guys in Lewiston, and he's complaining about the Somalis, and his big complaint is that there's too many of them at the welfare office, so it takes too long for him to get his disability check or whatever it is he's getting, or his Section 8 housing. He has to wait too long, and I don't know. That just made me laugh of the way people just view themselves and view other people. Obviously he saw himself as deserving of this stuff, and the newer people as not deserving of it.
Well, the larger story there, and it's interesting, is I don't know if it made it into the book, is because I didn't put many quotes from experts in there. That was the intent. The intent was not, but and the anthropologist I met in Lewiston, who studies the Somali community, had said to me, within the anthropological circles in sociology, the way we think of racism is provoked. Racism flourishes when a visibly different group is seen to be jumping the queue. Mm-hmm. And here's this guy, a white guy. He says he's Vietnam vet. I can't. I didn't fact check my when people told me stuff. Mm-hmm. Who's living on the margins, who's living in and out of Section 8 housing, living sometimes by the tent, and by the river. Who relies on handouts and relies on government assistance, whose line is literally bigger. And his view is very much like, and believe me, he was a racist. And a lot of things he said, it was like, his view was, wait a second, I did all this for my country. And in his mind, again, I can't fact check it, he was injured in Vietnam. And, or maybe his friend was, who's just, and wait, man, who are these newcomers who are, quote, in his mind, jumping the queue? Now, the Somalis will tell you they're not jumping any queue, man. They're just, they don't get any special benefits. I think that I think the woman says, they get maybe 6 months initial assistance, and then they're just like everybody else. So they're not jumping the queue. But he doesn't see it that way. He sees them as literally jumping the queue. There's a quote also of a person in Nebraska, a white person, who kind of was talking about the Somalis there and their little agriculture town, how they would just use the wrong line at Walmart.
Right.
Like he's like, the 10 items or less. Like he used that as, there's another example of, quote, bending the rules, jumping the queue in his mind. Like he only sees the Somalis doing it, where I'm sure everybody does it.
Right.
That's his, quote, justification for his views. And so.
So maybe this is the final question. This is kind of a meta question. So on the front of your book, you have a blurb from J.D. Vance. He says, a profound book. It'll break your heart, but also leave you with hope. And on the back of the book, you have the full quote from J.D. Vance, who wrote Hillbilly Elegy. You have the quote from a blurb from Elizabeth Brunig, whose husband Matt we just mentioned, who was an opinion columnist at the Washington Post. You have Patrick J. Deneen of the University of Notre Dame. I think he's a conservative political science professor. I could be wrong about that. You have Angela Nagel, who wrote Kill All Normies and is a Irish socialist, I think. And then you have Tom Cotton, who's a very conservative U.S. senator. So this is like the most diverse blurb on the back of a book I think I've ever seen. You have socialists and you have like hard right, American conservatives. And then your publishing company is Sentinel, which, as I understand, is like a conservative imprint of one of the larger publishing companies. So so what do you think about that? Is this, I think of you as like a lefty guy I remember you saying you voted for Bernie in the primary and that you've always voted for Democrats. But you have, Tom Cotton is a very conservative guy endorsing your book. So like, what do you think about that?
I think the people on the opposite side of the aisles, to use political speak, are doing it, I hope, out of good faith. Like, with good intention, meaning like, here's an opposing view, listen to it. I was surprised he blurbed it. I was surprised people who blurbed it. The right wing. I think it's a very deeply left book. I don't know what you think. The Sentinel itself is committed. They've made a committed effort to try to get liberal voices into their. And I'm one of the. And they're looking for more. So if you're a liberal who is looking for a non-traditional publisher, Sentinel is somebody who's willing to publish that. I generally don't believe in judging people by their past views, if they're open-minded going forward. Look, I know it's going to be problematic on the left that Tom Cotton blurred my book, but again, I'm taking it as an act of good faith on his part. And I certainly hasn't called. I don't think it's going to make me any more right wing. It's not going to change my views necessarily. I'll have a dialogue with the right. It has been somewhat surprising to me that it's resonated as well as it has within the right, some of the right community. I guess again, I'll ask you. I mean, I'm too close to it. Do you view it as a book from the left or a book from the right?
I don't view it as from the right. What it actually just made me think of was, around the time when The Wire, the HBO TV show The Wire, was on, I remember there was like kind of a debate about whether this was a liberal or a conservative show. And David Simon, the guy who created it, is like a flaming liberal. And most Hollywood productions are like essentially made by liberals. But conservatives like looked at The Wire and was like, this is a show about government failure and the things that government can't do. So what I came to think about it was like The Wire was like such an accurate depiction of reality that just in the way that two people in real life can look at something and the conservative says, oh, this makes sense to me, and the liberal says this makes sense to me. Maybe your book is like, I mean, a lot of it is like you're just finding these people and letting them say what they want to say. So sometimes they say things that that jive more with conservatives, and sometimes they say things that jive more with liberals, or maybe they say something that's kind of ambiguous, and either side could say, well, that proves that I'm right about XYZ. So yeah, so you're doing like reporting and showing things that we don't usually see, and it's about groups of people who we don't usually think about. In The Wire, it was like the drug dealers and people who are addicted to drugs. So I think it's like, a multiplicity of interpretations is possible.
Right. I guess, putting that framework, I would say, yeah, the government has failed, but we need more government. It's failed because we don't have enough of it. And it's failed because we don't have, we don't have a government that focuses on the working class. We have a government that focuses on the elite. So I agree that it says the government's failed. I agree with the conservatives, but their answer if we should have less government, I think, is a little bit. It's not necessarily my answer. And part of the reason I stayed away from giving policies suggestions was A, it's boring, and B, one of the things I want people to come away with is I want people to judge for themselves. I don't want to be the interpreter of. I think it's offensive for me to say, here's all these voices, here's what they say you should do. And I think I think people should judge for themselves what those people are saying.
Yeah, and I think your book is much more descriptive than prescriptive, because you're going to speak to people who are not usually focused on in the media in any way. So, and like letting them tell their stories and talk about their lives and how they understand things. So, yeah, and as shown, it's about 75% text, but 25% of your photographs, and they're all very interesting to look at. I just randomly turned to this double page. So I encourage people to if you enjoyed this conversation, check out the book. Dignity by Chris Arnade. Is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
I think that's good, and I want to thank you for having me. And I'm sorry about if you heard the lawnmower and my technical skills, but thanks again. Okay.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming back on.
And find McDonald's in Rochester.
I'll go and search for one. Yeah, there's one near me, but I actually live now in one of the Rochester's inner ring suburbs. So I doubt this is the one you're thinking about, but we'll figure it out. Okay, so thank you, Chris. Thank you to our viewers and listeners. You could subscribe to the show on iTunes. You could rate it on iTunes. You could do all sorts of other things, and I encourage you to do so. But we'll thank you again, and we'll see you again next time.
All right, cheers.